What if a space marine came into Star Wars? The void above Coruscant shimmered with an unnatural crimson light, not the gleaming streaks of hyperspace or the familiar glow of orbital platforms, but something alien to this galaxy. In the command center of the Jedi Temple, Master Windu stood rigid as the Force trembled around him in dissonant waves. Through the vast transparisteel dome, he watched as reality itself began to tear, the fabric of space splitting open like a wounded heart bleeding into the cosmos. From this wound emerged a single object, trailing wisps of otherworldly energy, a drop pod bearing symbols and patterns no Republic database could identify. Whatever stepped from that pod would forever change the balance of power in a galaxy already teetering on the edge of darkness. The question was not whether the Jedi could stop this visitor from beyond the stars, but whether they should even try. "Have the Republic fleet been alerted?" he asked, his voice cutting through the quiet panic that had settled over the room. A young Padawan nodded. "Yes, Master Windu. Chancellor Palpatine has ordered a defensive formation, but the anomaly doesn't match any known hyperspace signature." Windu's hand drifted to his lightsaber hilt, fingers closing around the familiar metal. The Force whispered warnings in his ears, a tide of premonition rising in his consciousness. Whatever approached carried with it the weight of war, of devotion twisted into something unyielding and absolute. He had felt such conviction before, in the hearts of zealots and tyrants across countless worlds, but never with such cold, mechanical certainty. "Inform Master Yoda," he commanded. "Tell him the disturbance we felt is manifesting." High above, beyond the atmosphere where Coruscant's endless cityscape gave way to stars, reality itself began to tear. It started as a pinprick of crimson light, pulsing like a wounded heart against the black canvas of space. Republic cruisers moved to intercept, weapons charging as the anomaly grew, stretching outward in jagged, lightning-like patterns that seemed to wound the very fabric of the cosmos. The ship captains watched in mute horror as the rift widened, revealing a churning, impossible space beyond, not the clean blue tunnel of hyperspace, but something raw and malevolent, a wound in reality itself. From this wound emerged a single object, trailing wisps of unnatural energy like blood in water. A drop pod, brutalist in design, wreathed in flames as it plummeted toward Coruscant's glittering surface. Defense systems tracked its descent, but something in its construction defied their targeting algorithms. The pod streaked through layers of sky, a meteor of ceramite and adamantium, until it struck the upper levels of the Senate district with the force of a small warhead. The impact shook the foundations of towering buildings, shattering transparisteel windows for kilometers around. Emergency sirens wailed as security forces converged on the crash site, a smoking crater torn into one of Coruscant's most prestigious plazas. Civilians fled in terror as something moved within the twisted wreckage of the drop pod. Metal groaned, hydraulics hissed, and a massive figure emerged from the destruction. Brother Captain Titus of the Ultramarines stood amid the rubble, his ancient power armor bearing the scars of 1,000 battles across as many worlds. His helm's autosenses scanned the alien cityscape, targeting runes flickering across his vision as he assessed this unknown territory. Nothing registered as familiar. Not the architecture, not the species that fled before him, not even the composition of the air itself. The captain's hand fell to his bolt pistol, his other gripping the haft of a power axe, still deactivated at his side. "In the Emperor's name," he whispered, his deep voice rendered mechanical by his helm's voxcaster, "what heresy is this?" Clone troopers arrived first, their white armor gleaming in the artificial daylight of Coruscant's upper levels. They formed a perimeter, DC-15 blasters aimed at the towering figure that stood nearly 3 meters tall. Their commander approached cautiously, his helmet masking any fear he might feel at the sight of the giant in blue armor adorned with strange symbols. "In the name of the Galactic Republic," the clone commander announced, "identify yourself and state your purpose." Titus regarded the soldiers with wary contempt. Their armor was pathetically thin, their weapons primitive compared to his own. Yet they moved with precision that spoke of extensive training, an efficiency that reminded him of the Imperial Guard, but they were clearly not of the Imperium. No aquilas adorned their armor, no prayers to the Emperor fell from their lips. "I am Brother Captain Titus of the Ultramarines chapter, servant of the God Emperor of mankind." His voice boomed across the plaza, amplified by his helm's speakers. "I demand to know what system this is, and by what authority you challenge a space marine of the Adeptus Astartes." The terms meant nothing to the clone commander, but the arrogance was unmistakable. He raised his hand, signaling his troops to maintain their positions. "You've crashed into the Senate District of Coruscant, capital of the Galactic Republic. I'm authorized to take you into custody until your intentions can be determined." Titus scanned the surrounding buildings, the unfamiliar aircraft circling overhead, the alien races watching from a distance. His armor's machine spirit could match none of it to known Imperial databases. A terrible suspicion formed in his transhuman mind. He was far from the Emperor's light, perhaps cast into some Xenos realm by the warp storm that had engulfed his ship. The thought kindled a cold fury in his heart. "I submit to no authority but the Emperor's throne," Titus replied. His power axe hummed to life, crackling with disruptive energy. "If this is some Xenos deception or warp, illusion, know that I shall purge it with righteous fire." The first blaster bolt struck his pauldron before the clone commander could respond. A nervous trooper, perhaps, or one who recognized the threat before his brothers. The energy discharge left a scorch mark on the ancient ceramite, but nothing more. Titus turned his helm toward the offending soldier, targeting runes locking on. "So be it," he growled. His bolt pistol barked once, the mass-reactive shell striking the clone trooper center mass. Unlike the clean hole a blaster might leave, the bolt round penetrated the white armor and detonated inside, reducing the trooper's torso to a red mist contained within the shattered shell of his armor. The remaining clones opened fire immediately, blue energy bolts raining upon the space marine. Titus moved with a speed that belied his massive bulk, charging through the fusillade. Blaster bolts dissipated against his armor or missed entirely as his transhuman reflexes carried him between the lines of fire. His power axe swept in a brutal arc, cleaving through 3 clone troopers in a single swing. Their armor, designed to withstand conventional weapons, provided no resistance against the disruption field that enveloped the axe's adamantium head. "For the Emperor," Titus roared, his bolt pistol claiming 2 more lives as he waded through the Republic's forces. Blood and viscera coated his blue armor now, turning the proud ultramarine livery into something nightmarish. The clone commander backpedaled, desperately calling for reinforcements as he witnessed the slaughter of his squad. "Target is hostile. Repeat, unknown assailant is hostile. Request Jedi support immediately." Titus paused amid the carnage, his helm's auto senses detecting the approach of new vehicles, sleek speeders bearing more soldiers. He accessed his armor's auspex, scanning for strategic positions. This was clearly enemy territory, and despite his transhuman abilities, even a space marine could be overwhelmed by sufficient numbers. He needed to secure a defensive position, gather intelligence, and determine how to return to Imperial space, or, failing that, how to bring the Emperor's light to this blasphemous realm. With methodical precision, Titus retrieved a frag grenade from his belt, primed it, and hurled it toward the approaching speeders. The explosion sent one crashing into a building, while the others veered away. Using the distraction, he charged toward a nearby structure that his tactical assessment identified as defensible, a towering edifice of stone and transparisteel that rose like a spire above the surrounding cityscape. What Titus could not know was that he had chosen the Jedi Temple as his destination. Amid the meditation gardens of the Jedi Temple, Master Yoda's eyes snapped open. The ancient Jedi had been deep in communion with the Force, seeking clarity about the disturbance that had rippled through their awareness. Now, that disturbance had taken physical form, and its presence burned in the Force like a wound, not dark, precisely, but fundamentally wrong, as if cut from a different fabric of existence. "Coming here it is," Yoda said, rising to his feet with the aid of his Geimer stick. The other Jedi Masters in the garden, Ki-Adi Mundi and Luminara Unduli, likewise rose, their expressions grave. What manner of being could create such discord in the Force? Luminara wondered aloud, her tattooed face lined with concern. "Not of our galaxy, I believe," Yoda replied, his long ears drooping slightly. "From beyond the cosmic veil, this one comes. Great purpose it carries, great danger as well." The temple's alert system activated, bathing the serene garden in pulsing red light. Throughout the vast complex, Jedi Knights and their Padawans moved with practiced efficiency toward defensive positions. It had been centuries since the temple had faced direct assault, but the Clone Wars had taught them vigilance. Master Windu's voice echoed through the comm system. Unidentified hostile approaching the temple's eastern approach. All knights converge. Padawans and younglings to secure areas. Yoda closed his eyes briefly, feeling the approaching presence through the Force. What he sensed confused him, not the cold void of the dark side, but a burning light, rigid and unyielding, a faith so absolute it had become a kind of violence unto itself. "Careful we must be," Yoda cautioned. "Not evil this one is, but dangerous still. A warrior born of different truths." Outside the temple's massive entrance, Titus confronted his first real obstacle. The ornate doors stood 3 times the height of a normal man, constructed of materials his armor's sensors could not fully identify. More importantly, they were guarded by robed figures, wielding weapons that defied Imperial categorization, handles from which extended blades of pure energy, humming with power that registered as neither plasma nor disruption field. "Halt," commanded one of the guards, a green-skinned humanoid with tentacles flowing from her head instead of hair. "You will proceed no further." Titus assessed the defenders with tactical precision. Their robes offered no apparent armor, yet they carried themselves with the confidence of veteran warriors. The energy blades they wielded glowed with an intensity that suggested extreme heat or disruptive potential. Most curious of all, his auto-senses detected unusual energy patterns emanating from the warriors themselves, not warp energy, which would have triggered immediate countermeasures, but something else. Something that reminded him, disturbingly, of the psychic aura projected by the librarians of his chapter. "I seek answers," Titus responded, keeping his bolt pistol lowered but ready. "This structure appears to be a place of authority or knowledge. I would speak with your leaders." "The Jedi Temple is not open to armed intruders," the green-skinned guardian replied, "particularly those who have slaughtered Republic troops. Surrender your weapons and submit to questioning, or leave immediately." Jedi. The term registered in Titus's transhuman memory. A warrior order of some kind, perhaps analogous to one of the Imperium's militant organizations. Their weapons and apparent psychic abilities marked them as potentially dangerous, perhaps even reminiscent of the Eldar with their witchblades and sorcery. "I cannot surrender," Titus stated flatly. "My weapons and armor are sacred to the Adeptus Astartes. I am oath-bound to yield them only in death." His enhanced hearing detected the soft sound of footsteps behind him, more of these Jedi, moving to surround him. A tactical situation was developing, one that might not favor even his transhuman abilities against unknown weaponry. The decision was made for him when a new figure appeared at the temple entrance, a tall human with dark skin and a stern countenance. Unlike the others, this one radiated authority and lethal competence that even Titus could recognize across the cultural divide. "I am Mace Windu, Master of the Jedi Order," the newcomer announced. "You've brought violence to a city of peace, stranger. Explain yourself before more blood is shed." Titus recognized the voice from the communications he had intercepted during his approach. A commander, then, one worthy of respect, if not obedience. "I am Brother Captain Titus of the Ultramarines, seconded to the Ordo Xenos. I was in pursuit of a Xenos vessel through the warp when a storm overtook my ship." Titus kept his weapons ready but made no aggressive moves. "I seek only to determine where I am and how to return to Imperial space." The soldiers attacked first. Windu's eyes narrowed slightly. Your pod crashed into a civilian plaza. The troopers were responding to a potential threat, which you became the moment you opened fire. Now you approach the Jedi temple armed for war. His hand moved to the lightsaber at his belt. I sense great violence in you, but also duty. Surrender your weapons, and we can speak without further bloodshed. Titus stood motionless for a long moment. His primary mission was to return to the Imperium, not to waste his life in needless combat against potential allies. Yet everything in his training and indoctrination rebelled against surrendering his war gear to Xenos or potential heretics. I will lower my weapons, he finally conceded, but they remain with me. If you are men of knowledge as well as war, perhaps you can aid my return to the Emperor's realm. If not... He left the threat unspoken. Windu seemed to consider this. You may enter with your weapons inactive, under escort, and only to the antechamber. One hostile move, and you will find the Force is not merciful to those who threaten its servants. The Force. Another term for Titus to catalogue, some local name for psychic power, perhaps, or a religious concept. Either way, it warranted investigation. Agreed, Titus said, powering down his axe and holstering his bolt pistol. The temple's antechamber was vast, its ceiling soaring dozens of meters overhead. Ancient statues of robed figures lined the walls, their stone faces serene yet watchful. Titus stood in the center of this space, surrounded by a circle of Jedi Knights with their deactivated lightsaber hilts held ready. He had removed his helm as a gesture of partial trust, revealing a face that was recognizably human yet subtly wrong. Skin too pale, features too perfect in their symmetry, eyes that held the cold calculation of a predator. Master Yoda entered last, his small form causing Titus to momentarily question his autosenses. The Space Marine had encountered many Xenos species across his centuries of service, but none quite like this diminutive green figure who nonetheless radiated power that registered on multiple scanning spectrums. A visitor from beyond our stars, you are, Yoda said, his syntax strange to Titus's ears. Brought here by the Force for what purpose, I wonder? I recognize no Force, Titus replied stiffly. I serve only the God Emperor of mankind, Master of the Imperium, and Lord of a million worlds. If your powers brought me to this place, then return me to my rightful galaxy immediately. Windu and Yoda exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Not of our doing, your arrival was, Yoda clarified. A disturbance in the Force we felt. A rift between realities, perhaps. Return you immediately, we cannot. Titus's expression hardened. Then I must find my own way back. My duty to the Emperor cannot be fulfilled in this misplaced realm. And what duty is that? Windu asked, his voice carrying an edge of suspicion. We've reviewed the security footage. You slaughtered clone troopers with weapons of terrible power. Is such violence the mandate of your Emperor? The Space Marine straightened, his massive form seeming to fill more of the chamber. The Emperor protects mankind through the strength of his armies. We stand against the Xenos, the heretic, and the daemon that mankind might endure in a galaxy that desires our extinction. If that requires violence, then violence is sacred. The words hung in the air, their zealotry unmistakable even to those unfamiliar with the Imperium's creed. Several of the younger Jedi shifted uncomfortably, sensing the absolute conviction behind Titus's declaration. Many similarities I sense, Yoda said after a thoughtful pause. A galaxy at war, yours is. Defenders of humanity, you claim to be. So too, protect the Republic and all its peoples, the Jedi do. He tapped his Geimer stick against the marble floor. But differences, profound they are. No room for compassion, I sense in your doctrine. No peace in your hearts. Titus almost laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Compassion? Peace? Luxuries afforded to those who have never gazed into the abyss of the warp, or faced the numberless hordes that assail mankind from every corner of the void. Your Republic seems prosperous, Master Yoda. Perhaps you have not yet learned what sacrifices prosperity demands. "We are in the third year of a galactic civil war," Windu countered. "The Republic fights for its very survival against the Separatist Alliance. Billions have died, hundreds of worlds burn. We understand sacrifice all too well. Yet you hesitate to strike down one enemy at your gates," Titus observed. "In the Imperium, such hesitation would be counted as weakness, or worse, heresy. Strength without wisdom is merely brutality." A new voice interjected. Obi-Wan Kenobi had entered the chamber silently, his bearded face grave as he studied the Space Marine. "Your Imperium sounds less like a government and more like a death cult." Titus turned to face the newcomer, his enhanced physiology noting every detail, the confident stance, the calloused hands that spoke of extensive combat experience, the lightsaber hilt worn smooth by decades of use. "You may be right, Jedi," Titus admitted with surprising candor. "The Imperium is a brutal regime born of brutal necessity. I have seen horrors that would shatter the sanity of mortal men. I have witnessed entire worlds consumed by entities that should not exist in material space. Against such enemies, only absolute faith and overwhelming force offer salvation." A heavy silence followed his words. The Jedi Masters exchanged troubled glances, sensing the truth in Titus's declaration even as they recoiled from its implications. "Study this matter further we must," Yoda finally said. "A guest you shall be, Captain Titus, until understand your presence better. We do. Quarters will be prepared. Your weapons, keep if you must, but use them not." Titus inclined his head slightly. "I accept your hospitality, though I cannot remain idle for long. If there is no way to return to the Imperium, then I must consider my duty in this realm." As the Jedi escorts led Titus from the chamber, Windu turned to Yoda and Kenobi. "I sense a gathering storm. His presence disturbs the Force in ways I've never experienced." "Agree, I do," Yoda nodded solemnly. "From another reality entirely, he comes. Different laws, different powers govern his existence, a dangerous variable in already troubled times. Should we inform the Chancellor?" Kenobi asked. "This could have diplomatic implications beyond Jedi jurisdiction." Windu frowned. "Palpatine already commands too much influence over Jedi affairs. For now, we keep this matter within the temple. There's something about this Space Marine that the Force is trying to reveal to us. Something important." Little did they know that across Coruscant, in the shadows of his private chambers, Chancellor Palpatine already watched the recorded footage of Titus's arrival with great interest. His eyes, momentarily gleaming yellow in the darkness, narrowed thoughtfully as he studied the warrior from another galaxy. "How fascinating," he murmured to himself. "Perhaps the Force has provided a new instrument after all." The quarters assigned to brother Captain Titus befitted his status as an honored yet dangerous guest. A spacious meditation chamber normally reserved for visiting Jedi Masters had been reinforced and modified to accommodate his massive form and armor. The furnishings were sparse but elegant, crafted from materials that suggested antiquity and reverence. Through a vast transparisteel window, the endless cityscape of Coruscant stretched to the horizon, glittering with billions of lights as night fell. Titus stood before this window, his armor's auto-senses scanning the unfamiliar world. Orbital platforms hung in the distant sky, their function unclear but their military potential obvious to his tactical mind. Aircraft moved in orderly patterns through designated skylanes, suggesting a civilization with rigid protocols despite its apparent decadence. Most interesting to the Space Marine were the occasional gleams of light from what appeared to be massive shipyards in near orbit. This republic built for war, whatever its Jedi protectors might claim about peace. He had spent the hours since his arrival in contemplation and preparation. First, a ritual of maintenance for his sacred armor, muttering litanies to its machine spirit as he checked each system and connection. Then, meditation upon the Codex Astartes, reciting passages from memory to strengthen his resolve in this alien place. Finally, a careful analysis of everything he had observed since his arrival, compiling a mental record that would serve as his report to the chapter master should he ever return to Makraj. A soft chime indicated someone at the chamber's entrance. Titus turned from the window, one hand instinctively moving toward his bolt pistol before consciously relaxing. "Enter," he commanded. The door slid open to reveal Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Jedi Master stepped into the room alone, seemingly unconcerned about facing the transhuman warrior without backup. "I trust your accommodations are adequate, Captain Titus?" Obi-Wan asked, his tone courteous but reserved. "They serve," Titus acknowledged, "though I find the lack of proper devotional space disappointing." Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow. "The Jedi Temple is primarily a place of meditation and learning. If you require specific religious accommodations, I'm sure arrangements could be made." Titus waved away the offer. "The Emperor's light reaches even here, distant though it may be. My faith requires no special trappings to remain pure." He studied the Jedi Master with renewed intensity. "You did not come to discuss my comfort." "Perceptive," Obi-Wan admitted with a small smile. "I came because I sensed you might be more willing to speak openly without the entire council present. Your arrival has created quite the stir among the Jedi, Captain Titus. Some believe you were sent by the Force itself. And what do you believe, Jedi Kenobi?" "I believe in coincidences no more than you do, I suspect." Obi-Wan moved to the window, gazing out at the cityscape. "But I also believe that understanding precedes judgment. You come from a reality that shapes its warriors differently than ours. Before we decide what your presence means, I would know more about the Imperium that forged you." Titus considered the request. There was no tactical advantage in withholding general information about the Imperium, and perhaps in explaining his native realm, he might better understand this one. "The Imperium of Man spans the galaxy," he began, his deep voice reverberating in the chamber. "A million worlds united under the God Emperor's divine rule. For 10,000 years, we have stood as the bulwark against the darkness that would consume all life, the Xenos predators that see humanity as prey, the ruinous powers that corrupt reality itself, the endless tide of threats that assail mankind from without and within." Obi-Wan listened attentively as Titus continued, describing an empire of unimaginable scale and brutality, where human life was expended by the billions in endless wars of survival, where faith and fear were the primary currencies of control, where technology was worshipped rather than understood, and where mutants and psychers, humans with genetic deviations or psychic powers, were either exploited or exterminated. "And you?" Obi-Wan finally asked. "The Adeptus Astartes. What are you in this grim future?" "We are the Emperor's finest warriors," Titus stated with unmistakable pride. "Created from the finest human stock, enhanced through gene seed implantation and biochemical augmentation, conditioned through decades of training and indoctrination. We are posthuman, designed for a single purpose: war. We know no fear, no doubt, no hesitation in carrying out the Emperor's will. How many of you exist?" 1,000 chapters, each 1,000 brothers strong. 1,000,000 space marines to defend 1,000,000 worlds. Titus's expression darkened. Slightly. "Too few, by any tactical assessment. We are spread thin across the stars, each battle a desperate holding action against overwhelming odds." Obi-Wan shook his head, trying to comprehend the scale of conflict Titus described. "And you accept this eternal war as necessary, as right?" "What I accept is immaterial," Titus replied. "The galaxy does not bend to moral preferences, Jedi. It simply is. The enemies of mankind do not cease their predations because we might wish for peace. The daemon does not stay its hand because we might prefer civility." He gestured toward the cityscape beyond the window. "Your republic seems prosperous, protected. Perhaps you have been fortunate enough to avoid the true horrors that necessitated the Imperium's methods." A shadow passed over Obi-Wan's features. "We face our own darkness, Captain. The Sith, ancient enemies of the Jedi who wield the dark side of the Force, have returned after 1,000 years of hiding. They orchestrated the very war that now consumes the galaxy, turning the Republic against itself while they grow in power. Even now, we suspect the Sith Lord manipulates events from the shadows. Then strike, Titus urged, his massive fist clenching. If you know your enemy exists, why do you not hunt him down with every resource at your disposal? In the Imperium, such a threat would warrant exterminatus, the complete destruction of any world that might harbor it. Because we are not butchers, Obi-Wan responded firmly. Because we do not sacrifice our principles in the name of security. Because once we become what we fight against, the battle is already lost, regardless of who stands at the end. Titus fell silent, studying the Jedi with an unreadable expression. Such philosophy would be considered weakness, even heresy, in the Imperium. Yet he could not deny the strength he sensed in Kenobi, a resolve that came not from fanaticism, but from something the Space Marine could scarcely comprehend. Your way is not the Imperium's way, Titus finally said. Perhaps neither of us can truly understand the other's path. But know this, Jedi Kenobi, I did not choose to come to your galaxy, but while I am here, I shall act according to my oaths. If that means standing against these Sith you fear, so be it. If it means returning to the Emperor's light by any means necessary, I shall not hesitate. Obi-Wan regarded the Space Marine thoughtfully. And if those two goals should come into conflict, if returning to your Imperium required actions that threatened the Republic, Titus met his gaze unflinchingly. Then we would stand as enemies, and may the stronger conviction prevail. As Obi-Wan departed, leaving Titus once more to his contemplation, neither warrior could know that their conversation had been monitored. In his chambers across Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine smiled thinly as he deactivated the surveillance feed. The Space Marine's ruthless pragmatism, his unquestioning loyalty to authority, and his capacity for sanctioned violence presented opportunities. All that remained was to determine which Master Titus would ultimately serve in this new galaxy, the distant Emperor he could no longer reach, or the one who stood ready to claim this galaxy as his own. Dawn broke over Coruscant, the artificial precision of its chronometers ensuring that the first rays of sunlight crested the horizon at exactly the same moment each day. In the Jedi Temple, many rose with this light, beginning their daily meditations as they had for 1,000 generations. But in his assigned quarters, Titus had not slept. Space Marines required little rest compared to unaugmented humans, and his transhuman mind had been occupied with analysis and planning throughout the night cycle. A decision had formed in the Space Marine's consciousness, crystallizing with the certainty that guided all his actions. If he could not immediately return to the Imperium, then he would bring Emperor's light to this galaxy. He would study its powers and weaknesses, assess its threats and resources, and prepare it for integration into the Imperium should a way between realms ever be found again. To begin this mission, he needed to understand the power structure of this Republic, and more importantly, the nature of this force that the Jedi wielded. A scheduled escort arrived to bring him to the council chamber. 2 Jedi Knights, their lightsabers prominently displayed at their belts, led Titus through the temple's vast corridors. The Space Marine noted every defensive position, every junction and choke point, his tactical mind automatically mapping the structure even as he marveled at its architectural excess. The Imperium built for intimidation and function, this temple, despite its martial purpose, embraced beauty and contemplation in ways that seemed almost heretical to Titus's indoctrinated sensibilities. The council chamber itself occupied the highest spire of the temple, a circular room whose windows offered a panoramic view of Coruscant's cityscape. 12 seats formed a perfect circle, though only half were currently occupied. Masters Yoda, Windu, and Kenobi were present, along with 3 others Titus had not yet met, a tall Sarian with an elongated cranium, a Keldor wearing a breathing mask, and a Togruta female whose montral horns quivered slightly as the Space Marine entered. "Captain Titus," Windu acknowledged, gesturing to the center of the chamber. "The Council has convened to discuss your situation and potential courses of action." Titus took his position, standing at parade rest with his hands clasped behind his back. His armor's sensors catalogued each council member, assessing their potential threat level based on subtle energy readings and physiological cues. All registered abnormal psychic potential, though none triggered the warnings associated with warp entities. "Reached a decision, have you?" Yoda observed. Not a question, but a statement. The ancient master's perception disturbed Titus. It suggested psychic abilities beyond mere energy manipulation. "I have," Titus confirmed. "If return to the Imperium is not immediately possible, then I must continue my duty here. The Emperor's work is never done, regardless of which galaxy hosts his servant." "And what does this Emperor's work entail?" asked the Serian Master, his tone diplomatic but wary. "The protection of humanity," Titus replied without hesitation. "The elimination of threats to mankind's dominion. The spread of the imperial truth to those who have not yet received the Emperor's light." The council members exchanged glances, their concern palpable even to Titus's psychically null perception. "The Republic encompasses thousands of sentient species," Windu stated. "Many of our greatest Jedi, including Master Yoda, are not human. Your Imperium's human-centric doctrine would find little welcome here." Titus's expression remained impassive, but inwardly he noted the confirmation of this galaxy's Xenos-tolerant heresy. "I am a soldier, not a missionary," he replied. "My primary concern is identifying and neutralizing threats. Your Sith enemies, for instance, would fall under my purview." "Convenient that alignment of interests is," Yoda noted, his large eyes studying Titus intently. "Yet different. Our methods remain. Kill first, the Imperium does. From what told us, you have. Seek peaceful resolution where possible, the Jedi do. Peace is a luxury afforded to the victorious," Titus countered. "In my experience, enemies rarely negotiate in good faith when they believe victory is attainable through violence." Obi-Wan leaned forward slightly. "And yet here you stand, Captain Titus, negotiating with us rather than attempting to fight your way free of the temple. You recognize the value of diplomacy when it serves your purpose." Titus inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the point. "Tactical pragmatism is not the same as ideological compromise, Master Kenobi. I choose not to waste my strength in needless conflict, but my duty remains unchanged. And what would convince you that your Emperor's methods might not be the only path?" The Togruta Master asked. "What evidence would you require to consider that this galaxy operates under different principles than your own?" An interesting question, and one that Titus had not expected from these warrior monks. In the Imperium, such philosophical inquiry would be dangerously close to heresy. Yet here, it seemed a natural extension of their doctrine. "Evidence is irrelevant to faith," he responded after a thoughtful pause. "But I am not blind to practical realities. Show me that your methods succeed where the Imperiums would fail, and I will. Consider the tactical implications." Master Windu nodded slowly. "A fair response. Then perhaps a demonstration is in order." He activated a holographic projector in the center of the room, displaying a tactical map of a distant star system. "We've received intelligence about a separatist research facility on Mustafar. They're developing new battle droid variants incorporating technology salvaged from your drop pod." Titus straightened, his full attention captured. "My equipment in the hands of enemies? This cannot stand. Such technology in the wrong hands could destabilize your entire galaxy." "Agree, we do," Yoda said. "A mission we propose. Accompany a Jedi team, you will. Observe our methods, learn our ways, while retrieving this technology." "I accept," Titus declared without hesitation, "though I make no promises to adhere to tactics I deem ineffective." "Master Kenobi will lead the mission," Windu stated, "along with Knight Skywalker and a detachment of clone troopers. You will depart at 0800 hours. As the council session concluded and Titus was escorted back to his quarters, Master Yoda remained behind with Windu and Kenobi. "Troubled I am," the ancient master admitted. "Great. Darkness I sense in the future. Captain Titus, a catalyst he may be, though for what outcome, unclear it remains. He's dangerous, Windu agreed. Not just physically, but ideologically. His beliefs represent everything the Jedi stand against: unquestioning obedience, sanctified violence, xenophobia cloaked as religious duty. And yet, Obi-Wan mused, there's something almost familiar about his conviction. A reflection, perhaps, of what the Jedi might become if we allow fear to guide our response to the Sith threat. A warning, then, Yoda nodded. Watch him closely, Obi-Wan. Learn from him we must, even as he learns from us. The Force brought him here for a purpose. Discover that purpose we shall. Across the cityscape, in the Chancellor's office, Palpatine reviewed the reports of the Jedi Council meeting, provided by his spies within the temple. His thin lips curled into a smile as he contemplated the Space Marine's impending mission to Mustafar. Such a convenient testing ground for this new piece on the galactic chessboard. With a gesture, he activated a secure communication channel. Count Dooku, he addressed the holographic figure that appeared before him. I have special instructions regarding the Mustafar facility. A unique visitor will be arriving soon, one with great potential for our cause. The volcanic planet Mustafar hung in the viewport of the Republic cruiser Vigilance like a wound in space, its surface a churning hellscape of lava rivers and obsidian formations. From the bridge, Titus observed the approach with tactical interest, his armor's autosenses recording everything from the planet's atmospheric composition to the orbital defense platforms that the ship's scanners had identified. Charming place, Anakin Skywalker commented as he joined the Space Marine at the viewport. The young Jedi Knight had maintained a wary distance since their departure from Coruscant, clearly uncomfortable with Titus's presence on the mission. Separatist facilities are typically built in the most inhospitable environments they can find, makes them harder to assault. A sound strategy, Titus acknowledged. Terrain that tests the limits of your enemy's endurance provides natural defensive advantages. In the Imperium, we establish fortresses on death worlds for similar reasons. Anakin studied the Space Marine with poorly concealed curiosity. You really believe all that, don't you? The Emperor as a god, the Imperium's divine mission, the necessity of endless war. I do not believe in gravity, yet it exists regardless of my faith, Titus replied. The Emperor protects mankind because mankind cannot protect itself. This is not dogma, Jedi Skywalker. It is observable reality where I come from. And what about the Force? Do you observe that too? Titus turned his helmed head toward Anakin, the lenses of his auto-senses glowing faintly red in the dim light of the bridge. I observe that you and your fellow Jedi manipulate energy in ways consistent with psychic phenomena in my galaxy. Whether you call it the Force or the Warp matters little. The practical application remains the same. The Warp? Anakin frowned. Is that what your people call it? The Warp is a dimension of pure psychic energy that underlies material reality, Titus explained, his voice taking on the tone of a battle brother instructing a neophyte. It is where the souls and emotions of sentient beings create ripples and currents. Psychers, those with genetic mutations, allowing them to tap this energy, can manipulate it to affect the material world. But the Warp is also home to entities of unimaginable malevolence, daemons that feed on mortal suffering and seek to corrupt reality itself. Anakin's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. That doesn't sound like the Force at all. The Force is created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. There's a light side and a dark side, but it's not infested with demons. Perhaps the fundamental energy is the same, but manifests differently in our respective realities, Titus suggested. Or perhaps your galaxy has been fortunate enough to avoid the corruption that plagues the Warp in mine. Either way, I would advise caution in its use. Power always exacts a price, Jedi Skywalker. Always. Their conversation was interrupted by Obi-Wan's arrival on the bridge. "We're beginning our approach," he informed them. "The Separatist facility is shielded, but Republic intelligence has identified a potential blind spot in their sensor coverage near the northern magnetic pole. We'll deploy via gunship under cover of the electromagnetic interference." Titus nodded appreciatively. "A sound tactical approach. What intelligence do we have on the facility's defenses?" "Standard battle droid battalions, likely reinforced with destroyer droids and Magna Guards," Obi-Wan replied, activating a holographic schematic of the target. The facility itself is built into a dormant volcanic tube with 3 primary levels. The research labs are on the lowest level, which our intelligence suggests is where your technology is being studied. The Space Marine studied the schematic with practiced efficiency, his transhuman mind calculating angles of approach, defensive choke points, and extraction vectors. "Your clone troops will be at a disadvantage in close quarters against superior numbers. I recommend a diversionary assault on the main entrance, while a smaller team infiltrates through these maintenance ducts." Anakin raised an eyebrow. "That's actually not a bad plan. Though I'm surprised you're concerned about clone casualties." "Unnecessary losses deplete strategic resources," Titus replied matter-of-factly. "Even in the Imperium, where human life is measured in the billions, we do not expend it without purpose." Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. "We'll modify your plan slightly. Anakin and I will lead the diversionary force, with most of the clones. Captain Titus, you'll infiltrate through the maintenance ducts with Commander Cody and a small squad. Your objective is to secure the research lab and any technology derived from your equipment." Titus inclined his head in agreement. "As you wish, though I would note that my armor's bulk may present challenges in confined spaces." "Your armor also makes you the most durable member of our strike team," Obi-Wan pointed out. "The maintenance ducts may be tight, but they're designed to accommodate maintenance droids larger than a human. You should fit, if uncomfortably." As the planning continued, Titus found himself reassessing these Jedi. Though their philosophical differences remained vast, their tactical acumen was respectable. Obi-Wan, in particular, demonstrated a strategic mind that would not have been out of place among the veteran sergeants of the Ultramarines. Perhaps there was more to learn from these warrior monks than he had initially assumed. Hours later, as the mission commenced, Titus found himself crammed into a Republic gunship alongside Commander Cody and 5 clone troopers. The craft bucked and shuddered as it entered Mustafa's turbulent atmosphere, the heat of entry combining with the planet's volcanic emissions to create air currents that tested even the pilot's considerable skills. "Never thought I'd fight alongside someone who makes us clones look small," Cody commented, his voice crackling through his helmet's comm system. "Those droids won't know what hit them." Titus studied the clone commander with professional interest. Though physically unaugmented by Space Marine standards, the clones exhibited discipline and cohesion reminiscent of the Imperial Guard's better regiments. Their identical genetic template reminded him uncomfortably of the mass-produced soldiers utilized by certain Xeno species, yet they were undeniably human in their mannerisms and psychology. "Your troops fight well," Titus acknowledged. "Though, your armor seems inadequate against energy weapons." "Phase 2 armor can stop a glancing blaster bolt," Cody responded with a hint of defensiveness. "Direct hits are another matter, but that's why we train to avoid getting hit in the first place. A prudent approach when technological solutions are insufficient," Titus agreed. "In the Imperium, we compensate for similar limitations with overwhelming firepower and numbers." The gunship's interior illumination shifted to red, indicating imminent deployment. Through the viewports, Titus could see the hellish landscape of Mustafar spread below them, rivers of molten rock snaking between jagged obsidian formations, geysers of superheated gas erupting randomly across the tortured terrain. The Separatist facility was barely visible, a dark angular structure embedded in the side of a massive volcanic cone. "Approaching drop point," the pilot announced. "Electromagnetic interference is playing havoc with our sensors. The diversion team is in position and awaiting your signal." Titus checked his bolt pistol and power axe one final time, mentally reciting the litany of accurate strikes as he prepared for combat. Whatever technological blasphemies these separatists had derived from his sacred equipment, he would ensure they paid the appropriate price for their presumption. The Emperor might be galaxies distant, but his judgment would be delivered nonetheless. The gunship touched down on a narrow ledge of black rock, its landing struts sinking slightly into the heat-softened surface. Cody and his men deployed first, securing the perimeter with practiced efficiency. Titus emerged last, his massive form ducking beneath the craft's ceiling as he stepped onto Mustafa's surface. His armor's temperature regulators immediately engaged, compensating for the extreme heat that would have quickly incapacitated an unaugmented human. Maintenance entrance should be 200 meters north, concealed behind that lava fall, Cody reported, consulting a holographic map projected from his wrist device. Scanners show minimal droid activity in this sector. Most of their forces are being drawn to the main entrance as planned. Then we proceed with haste, Titus stated, activating his armor's advanced auto-sensors to penetrate the volcanic haze that limited visual range. I shall take point. My armor can withstand environmental hazards that would prove fatal to your men. As they advanced across the treacherous terrain, the distant sound of battle reached them even through Mustafa's turbulent atmosphere, the distinctive hum of lightsabers and crack of blaster fire indicating that Kenobi and Skywalker's diversion was fully engaged. Titus found himself curious about how the Jedi's energy blades would fare against combat servitors, or, Emperor forbid, a traitor Astartes. Such speculation would have to wait, however, as they reached the concealed entrance to the facility. The maintenance hatch was secured with an electronic lock that Cody's slicing equipment made quick work of. As it slid open, revealing a dimly lit tunnel barely wide enough for Titus's armored form, the Space Marine activated his helm's low-light vision. I shall proceed first, he announced. Follow at 5-meter intervals. Maintain Vox discipline unless contact is made. Without waiting for acknowledgement, Titus entered the tunnel, forced to advance in a half-crouch that would have been exhausting for a normal human, but merely inconvenient for his transhuman physiology. His auto-sensors detected power conduits running along the ceiling and walls, while his enhanced hearing picked up the distant mechanical sounds of droids moving through the facility proper. For 20 minutes they advanced through the maintenance network, occasionally consulting Cody's holographic map to navigate the labyrinthine system. Twice they were forced to halt as patrol droids passed nearby, their monotonous electronic communications audible through the thin walls separating the tunnels from the main corridors. Finally, they reached a junction that, according to their intelligence, should provide access to the research level. A ventilation grate offered a limited view of the laboratory beyond, a vast chamber filled with diagnostic equipment, computer terminals, and what appeared to be disassembled components of Imperial technology. Titus's enhanced vision identified fragments of his drop pod's outer hull, communication arrays, and most alarmingly, parts of what might have been a spare bolt pistol that had been stored in the pod's emergency cache. Most concerning of all, however, was the figure overseeing the research. Not a droid or even a typical separatist scientist, but a tall, bald woman with skin as pale as death. She moved with unnatural grace, her fingers occasionally tracing patterns in the air that left momentary afterimages in Titus's autosense readouts. At her hip hung a curved metal hilt that the Space Marine immediately recognized as a lightsaber. Complications, Titus whispered, his Vox unit set to minimal output. A Force user oversees the laboratory, female, armed with an energy blade, exhibiting characteristics consistent with psychic activity. Cody edged forward to peer through the grate. That's a Sage Ventress, he hissed, one of Count Dooku's assassins. She's bad news, has killed multiple Jedi in single combat. Titus processed this information with cold calculation. A combatant capable of killing Jedi represented a significant threat, potentially beyond the capabilities of the clone troopers. However, the Adeptus Astartes were created specifically to engage enemies that normal humans could not hope to defeat. This Ventress, whatever her abilities, would find a space marine a very different challenge from the Jedi she had previously encountered. Change of plans, Titus decided. I shall engage the Force user directly. Commander Cody, your men will secure the Imperial technology and prepare it for extraction. Avoid direct conflict with the primary target if possible. With respect, sir, Cody objected. General Kenobi's orders were for us to secure the technology together. Ventress is Jedi business. Your concern is noted, Commander, Titus replied, his tone making it clear the matter was decided. But this is now Adeptus Astartes' business. That technology contains secrets that must not fall into unauthorized hands. The Emperor protects, but he expects his servants to act when necessary. Before Cody could protest further, Titus pressed his massive, gauntleted hands against the ventilation grate and, with a surge of transhuman strength, tore it from its moorings. The metal shrieked in protest, immediately alerting everyone in the laboratory to their presence. Titus launched himself through the opening, landing on the laboratory floor in a combat crouch, his bolt pistol already drawn and his power axe humming to life in his other hand. In the name of the Emperor, he intoned, his helm's voxcaster giving his voice an inhuman resonance. I claim this technology by right of the Adeptus Astartes. Surrender it immediately or face judgment. Ventress turned slowly to face him, her colorless eyes widening momentarily before narrowing in predatory assessment. So, she purred, her voice carrying an echo of something ancient and malevolent, you're the visitor from another galaxy. My master will be pleased when I deliver you and your technology to him. With a gesture from her hand, the battle droids stationed around the laboratory raised their weapons and opened fire. Blaster bolts ricocheted off Titus's armor or missed entirely as he moved with the uncanny speed of an Astartes, closing the distance to the nearest cluster of droids. His power axe cleaved through their metal bodies with contemptuous ease, servos and circuitry spilling from the wounds like mechanical viscera. Commander Cody and his men emerged from the ventilation shaft, taking up defensive positions around the laboratory's perimeter and engaging the remaining droids with disciplined blaster fire. Through the chaos, Titus kept his primary focus on Ventress, who had ignited twin lightsabers that glowed with crimson energy, a color that triggered warning associations in Titus's indoctrinated mind. In the Imperium, such red energy signatures were often associated with warp corruption. You're an impressive specimen, Ventress observed as she circled the space marine, her blades weaving patterns in the air. But you're in a galaxy where brute strength isn't enough. Here, the Force decides who lives and who dies. I have faced witches before, Titus responded, his bolt pistol tracking her movement. Their powers did not save them from the Emperor's justice. He fired a burst from his bolt pistol, the mass-reactive shells screaming through the air with devastating potential. Ventress moved with preternatural speed, her lightsabers deflecting several rounds while she simply dodged others. The deflected shells exploded against nearby equipment, showering the laboratory with debris and sparks. Primitive projectiles, Ventress sneered, powerful but slow. Titus had expected as much, the brief exchange confirming his tactical assessment. This Force user relied on precognitive abilities to avoid conventional attacks, much like certain Eldar seers he had encountered in previous campaigns. Such opponents required unconventional tactics, overwhelming speed, unpredictable patterns, or attacks too numerous to counter. Holstering his bolt pistol, Titus gripped his power axe in both hands and charged. The suddenness of his assault caught Ventress by surprise, her eyes widening as nearly 300 kilograms of ceramite-clad transhuman warrior bore down on her with speed that belied his bulk. She raised her lightsabers to parry, but Titus's axe struck with such force that even through the disruption field, the impact sent shockwaves up her arms. For a moment, lightsaber and power axe locked together, crackling with competing energy fields. Ventress strained against Titus's transhuman strength, her face contorted with effort. Then, rather than continue the contest of raw power, she disengaged with fluid grace, sliding beneath Titus's guard to slash at the joints of his armor where the ceramite plates connected. pain lanced through Titus's side as one lightsaber found a gap, searing through his black carapace and into the enhanced flesh beneath. It was a minor wound by Astartes standards, but it confirmed the lethal potential of these energy weapons against even power armor. He would need to be more cautious. "First blood to me," Ventress taunted, dancing away from his counter-strike. "How many more cuts before even your enhanced physiology fails, I wonder?" Titus did not respond to the provocation, instead using the moment to reassess his tactics. Direct confrontation was playing to her strengths: speed, precognition, precision. He needed to change the parameters of engagement, to force her into a scenario where her advantages were minimized. With a deliberate motion, he reached for a frag grenade on his belt. Ventress tensed, clearly anticipating him to throw it at her, a move her reflexes could easily counter. Instead, Titus hurled the grenade at the ceiling directly above the laboratory's central power distribution node. The explosion shattered coolant pipes and power conduits, plunging sections of the laboratory into darkness while superheated steam hissed into the air, obscuring visual range. In this environment, Titus's auto-senses gave him a decisive advantage. Through the steam and darkness, he could track Ventress's heat signature, while her own vision would be severely compromised. He moved silently through the obscured laboratory, his ceramite boots making remarkably little sound for something of his mass, the product of centuries of stalking prey in all manner of environments. "Hiding won't save you," Ventress called, her voice echoing through the chamber. "I can sense your presence through the Force, your fear, your determination, your faith." The last word was spoken with contemptuous amusement. She was bluffing, Titus realized. Her movements were too cautious, her lightsabers held defensively rather than with the aggressive confidence she had displayed earlier. While she could perhaps sense his general location, the precision of her awareness was compromised by the environmental conditions. Using this insight, Titus circulated through the laboratory, deliberately creating minor disturbances to draw her attention in false directions while he maneuvered for an optimal attack vector. Commander Cody and his men had used the distraction to secure the Imperial technology, efficiently collecting components and data storage devices while the remaining battle droids struggled to operate in the deteriorating conditions. Finally, Titus saw his opening. Ventress had backed herself near a bank of computers, using them as cover for her vulnerable rear while she scanned the steam-filled darkness. With explosive acceleration, Titus charged not directly at her, but at the heavy equipment bank beside her. His armored shoulder struck the machinery with devastating force, sending it toppling toward Ventress. She sensed the danger too late, forced to dive awkwardly to avoid being crushed. As she rolled to her feet, Titus was already upon her, his power axe sweeping in a horizontal arc that she barely managed to parry. The force of the blow sent her staggering backward, and before she could recover, Titus delivered a ceramite-clad kick to her midsection that launched her across the laboratory into a bank of monitoring equipment. Ventress collapsed amid the shattered machinery, blood trickling from her mouth, her lightsabers extinguished. Titus advanced methodically, his axe ready for the killing blow. As he loomed over her, Ventress looked up with hatred burning in her colorless eyes. "You've made a powerful enemy today," she hissed. "My master will not forget this." "Then he shall meet the same fate," Titus replied coldly, raising his axe. Before he could strike, the laboratory floor shuddered violently, warning klaxons activated throughout the facility, and the environmental systems began flashing emergency protocols. "Captain Titus," Cody shouted from across the room. "The facility's reactor is going critical. Ventress must have triggered a self-destruct sequence." Titus hesitated, the axe still poised for a killing blow. Strategic calculation warred with the urge to eliminate a confirmed threat. If the facility was truly about to be destroyed, every second counted for extraction with the recovered technology. "We have what we came for," Cody insisted. "We need to move now if we want to get off this rock alive." With a final look of contempt at the fallen assassin, Titus lowered his axe. "Consider your survival a tactical necessity, not mercy." he told Ventress. "When next we meet, the Emperor's judgment will be final." As he turned to join Cody and the clone troopers, Ventress's laughter followed him, a sound that contained more genuine amusement than he had expected from one so thoroughly defeated. "Oh, Captain," she called after him. "We've only just begun our dance. The dark side has shown me your fate, and I assure you, the Emperor plays a role you cannot imagine." Titus paused momentarily, something in her words triggering a deeper concern than mere threats should warrant, but there was no time to interrogate her further. The facility's destruction sequence was accelerating, and the mission took priority over personal confrontations. With the recovered Imperial technology secured, Titus and the clone team fought their way back through the maintenance tunnels as the structure around them began to collapse. They emerged onto Mustafar's hellish surface just as secondary explosions began to consume the facility. In the distance, another gunship was extracting Kenobi and Skywalker's team from the main entrance. Commander Cody signaled their own extraction craft, which swooped down through the volcanic haze to land on a precarious outcropping nearby. As they boarded the gunship and lifted away from the doomed facility, Titus watched the structure collapse into Mustafar's molten surface, disappearing beneath waves of lava. He felt no satisfaction in the destruction, only a cold certainty that the confrontation with Ventress represented merely the opening moves in a more complex game than he had initially perceived. "Mission accomplished, Captain," Cody noted, gesturing to the secured containers of recovered Imperial technology. "Though I have to say, your combat doctrine is different from what we're used to with the Jedi. The Adeptus Astartes do not fight to preserve life or maintain balance," Titus responded. "We fight to achieve victory, whatever the cost. It is why we were created." As the gunship ascended toward the Vigilance waiting in orbit, Titus's thoughts turned to Ventress's final words. "The dark side has shown me your fate, and I assure you, the Emperor plays a role you cannot imagine." What possible knowledge could this witch have of the Emperor? What visions had her psychic abilities granted her? For the first time since his arrival in this galaxy, Brother Captain Titus felt something that his hypno-indoctrination had nearly eliminated from his emotional capacity: doubt. Aboard the Vigilance, the mood was one of cautious victory as the Republic forces prepared to return to Coruscant. The Imperial technology had been secured in a specially shielded compartment of the ship's cargo hold, with both clone troopers and Jedi standing guard. Titus had insisted on personally inspecting each component, ensuring nothing of significance had been left behind or tampered with. In the ship's medical bay, a 21B surgical droid attended to the wound Titus had sustained from Ventress's lightsaber. The Space Marine sat impassively as the droid worked, his enhanced physiology already accelerating the healing process. To an unaugmented human, such a wound would have been crippling or fatal. To an Astartes, it was a minor inconvenience. "Remarkable biological structures," the droid observed in its precise, mechanical voice. "Your healing rate exceeds even Jedi parameters by approximately 214%. The additional organs integrated with your lymphatic system appear to be synthesizing advanced coagulants and regenerative compounds." Titus ignored the droid's commentary, focusing instead on the entrance of Obi-Wan and Anakin, both bearing minor injuries from their own engagement at the facility's main entrance. The younger Jedi's expression was particularly thunderous, barely contained anger evident in his posture and the set of his jaw. "You were ordered to secure the technology, not engage Ventress directly," Anakin stated without preamble. "She's a Sith assassin, too dangerous for anyone but a Jedi to confront." "Anakin," Obi-Wan cautioned, "perhaps we should discuss this after everyone has had a chance to recover and file their reports." "No," Anakin insisted. "I want to hear his explanation now. Commander Cody says he deliberately disobeyed the mission parameters and nearly got them all killed." Titus regarded the young Jedi with the detached interest of a veteran evaluating a promising but undisciplined recruit. "The mission parameters changed when we identified the presence of a high-value target overseeing the research. Tactical doctrine dictated an immediate strike to neutralize the primary threat, while secondary objectives were secured by support elements." "That's not how we operate," Anakin countered. "We work as a team, following a coordinated plan. Your tactical doctrine nearly cost us the mission and the lives of good men." "Yet the mission was successful," Titus observed calmly. "The technology was recovered, and our casualties were minimal. The fact that the Sith assassin escaped is regrettable, but does not constitute mission failure." Obi-Wan stepped forward, his diplomatic nature asserting itself. "What Anakin is trying to express, Captain Titus, is that in the Republic military, and especially when working with Jedi, we value the lives of our soldiers and the success of the overall mission above individual glory or killing enemies." Titus tilted his head slightly, genuinely perplexed by the criticism. "There was no pursuit of glory in my actions, Master Kenobi. Merely the application of Adeptus Astarte's combat doctrine to a tactical situation. The Space Marine exists to engage threats beyond the capability of normal human soldiers. The Witch Ventress represented such a threat. I acted accordingly." "And if you had died?" Anakin demanded. "What would have happened to your precious Emperor's technology then?" The question gave Titus pause, not because he feared death, no Space Marine did, but because it highlighted a fundamental difference in their approaches to warfare. In the Imperium, strategic assets were protected by sacrificing tactical elements without hesitation. Here, it seemed, the Republic's military philosophy placed equal or greater value on the preservation of its warriors. "Had I fallen," Titus finally replied, "Commander Cody would have completed the mission according to his training. The loss of a single Space Marine, even one of captain rank, is an acceptable strategic cost for the security of Imperial technology. We are weapons, Jedi Skywalker, valuable weapons, extensively crafted and difficult to replace, but weapons nonetheless." A heavy silence followed his words. Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully, while Anakin's anger seemed to shift towards something more complex, perhaps pity or concern. The medical droid, oblivious to the tension, finished its work on Titus's wound and moved away. "That is where we fundamentally disagree, Captain," Obi-Wan finally said. "No sentient being is merely a weapon to be expended, not clones, not Jedi, and not Space Marines. Each life has inherent value beyond its tactical utility." "A compassionate philosophy," Titus acknowledged, "but one that invites strategic vulnerability. The enemies of mankind in my galaxy would exploit such sentiment without hesitation." "Perhaps," Obi-Wan conceded, "but without such principles, what exactly are we fighting to preserve? If we sacrifice our humanity to achieve victory, is it truly victory at all?" The question resonated with Titus in unexpected ways. Throughout his centuries of service, he had never questioned the Imperium's methods, the massive sacrifice of human lives, the brutality required to maintain control over 1,000,000 worlds, the uncompromising stance toward even the slightest deviation from Imperial doctrine. Such was the necessity of survival in a galaxy beset by horrors beyond mortal comprehension. But here, in this different reality, he was confronted with a civilization that faced its own existential threats, yet maintained principles that the Imperium had abandoned millennia ago. Was it naive idealism doomed to fail? Or had the Imperium lost something essential in its transformation into the machine of war that now dominated Titus's native galaxy? "Your question merits consideration, Master Kenobi," Titus finally responded, "though I make no promises that my conclusions will align with yours." Obi-Wan smiled slightly. "Consideration is all I ask, Captain. Now, perhaps we should all rest before our return to Coruscant. The Council will want a full debriefing, and I suspect Chancellor Palpatine will be most interested in our visitor's first field operation." As the Jedi departed, Titus remained in the medical bay, his transhuman mind processing the implications of their exchange. The mention of the Chancellor particularly caught his attention. Throughout his time in this galaxy, the political leadership of the Republic had remained distant, mentioned only in passing. Yet now, it seemed, this Chancellor Palpatine had taken personal interest in his presence. In the Imperium, Such attention from high authority would be either a great honor or the prelude to execution for suspected heresy. Here, Titus could not yet determine which equivalent applied, but he would prepare for either possibility, as his training demanded. The Vigilance entered hyperspace, the stars stretching into blue streaks outside the viewports as it began the journey back to Coruscant. In his temporary quarters, Titus knelt in meditation, reciting the litany of devotion while performing the ritual maintenance of his power armor. Each component was cleaned, blessed, and carefully examined for damage beyond what his wound had caused. As he worked, his thoughts returned to Ventress's parting words. "The Emperor plays a role you cannot imagine. What possible connection could exist between his God-Emperor and this distant galaxy? Was it merely the ravings of a defeated enemy, or something more significant?" For the first time in centuries, Brother Captain Titus felt the stirrings of a most dangerous emotion for a space marine: curiosity. The Vigilance arrived at Coruscant amid considerable fanfare, news of the successful mission having preceded it. A formal reception awaited in the main hangar of the Republic military base, including not only Jedi Masters but also several senatorial representatives, and most notably, Chancellor Palpatine himself. Titus observed the preparations with detached interest as the ship settled into its docking position. "Quite the welcome," Obi-Wan noted, joining Titus on the observation deck. "It seems your presence has captured the imagination of the Republic's leadership." "Political leaders often seek association with military victories," Titus replied. "It is the same in the Imperium, where planetary governors compete for the honor of hosting Space Marine chapters during campaigns. Chancellor Palpatine is particularly interested in matters relating to the Jedi and unusual Force phenomena," Obi-Wan said carefully. "Your arrival and the technology you brought represent both. I would advise caution in your dealings with him." Titus turned his helmed head toward the Jedi Master. "You distrust your own head of state?" "Trust is a complicated matter in wartime," Obi-Wan responded diplomatically. "The Chancellor has accumulated extraordinary emergency powers during the conflict, ostensibly to streamline the war effort. Many in the Jedi Council are concerned about the long-term implications for democracy." "Democracy," Titus repeated, the concept alien to Imperial governance. "The Imperium learned millennia ago that collective rule falters in the face of existential threats. Only unified authority under the Emperor's guidance has allowed mankind to survive." "And at what cost?" Obi-Wan asked quietly. "You've described a society where human life is expendable, where deviation from doctrine means death, where xenos species are systematically exterminated regardless of their intentions or actions. Is mere survival worth such a price?" Before Titus could respond, the ship's internal communications system announced their arrival and the commencement of disembarkation procedures. The recovered Imperial technology had already been secured for transport to the Jedi Temple, where it would be studied under controlled conditions with Titus's supervision. "It seems our philosophical discussion must wait," Obi-Wan said with a small smile. "Duty calls." The reception was elaborate by Republic military standards, though modest compared to the ceremonial pageantry the Imperium would have accorded a victorious Space Marine captain. Clone troopers stood at attention in perfect formation as Titus descended the ramp behind Obi-Wan and Anakin, his massive form drawing gasps and whispers from the assembled dignitaries. Chancellor Palpatine stepped forward to greet them, an elderly human with a benevolent countenance that nevertheless triggered Titus's instinctive wariness. In his centuries of service, the Space Marine had learned to recognize the masks worn by those who wielded power, the false humility, the carefully calibrated charm, the eyes that assessed everything as assets to be utilized or threats to be neutralized. "Master Kenobi, Knight Skywalker," Palpatine greeted warmly before turning his attention to Titus. "And Captain Titus of the Ultramarines, the Republic welcomes you back and extends its gratitude for your assistance in this important mission." Titus inclined his head slightly, observing protocol without subordinating himself. "The technology recovered was of Imperial origin. Its security was my duty, regardless of which galaxy hosts it." Of course," Palpatine agreed with an indulgent smile. "And I understand from preliminary reports that you encountered one of Count Dooku's assassins. Most impressive that you survived such an encounter. Even Jedi have fallen to Ventress's blades." "The witch fought with skill," Titus acknowledged, "but the Adeptus Astartes are created to overcome superhuman threats. Her abilities, while formidable by local standards, were not beyond my capacity to counter." Palpatine's eyes gleamed with an interest that seemed deeper than mere political courtesy. "Fascinating. I would very much like to hear more about these Adeptus Astartes and the Imperium that created them. Perhaps you would do me the honor of visiting my office at your convenience? I believe there is much we could learn from each other." Before Titus could respond, Master Windu stepped forward from among the assembled Jedi. "The captain remains under Jedi supervision, Chancellor, as agreed by the Council. His knowledge and the recovered technology present significant security considerations." "Of course, Master Windu," Palpatine conceded smoothly. "I wouldn't dream of interfering with Jedi matters. However, as Supreme Chancellor, I do have a responsibility to assess any potential impact on Republic security, perhaps a compromise. Captain Titus could visit my office accompanied by a Jedi representative of the Council's choosing." Windu's expression remained impassive, but Titus sensed the tension beneath the surface. There was unspoken conflict here, political maneuvering that reminded him of the constant power struggles between different factions of the Imperium's leadership. "The Council will consider your request, Chancellor," Windu finally said. "For now, Captain Titus will return to the temple with us to assist in the analysis of the recovered technology." Palpatine's smile never wavered. "Of course, Master Windu. I look forward to hearing from the Council." He turned back to Titus. "Until we meet again, Captain, may the Force be with you, or perhaps I should say, may your Emperor protect you." The familiar blessing, spoken in this unfamiliar context, sent an unexpected chill through Titus's enhanced system. Something in Palpatine's tone, or perhaps the knowing look in his eyes, suggested more than casual interest in Imperial doctrine. As the formal reception concluded and Titus departed with the Jedi contingent, he found his tactical assessment of the situation shifting. The political dynamics of this republic were more complex than they had initially appeared, with the relationship between the Jedi Order and the civil government clearly strained by underlying tensions. Such division represented both vulnerability and opportunity, depending on how it might align with his primary mission of returning to the Imperium. "The Chancellor seems most interested in your presence, Captain," Yoda commented as their transport moved through Coruscant's crowded skylanes toward the Jedi Temple. "Curious, this is, though perhaps not surprising." "He strikes me as a man accustomed to control," Titus observed. "My existence here represents an unknown variable outside his influence." "Perceptive, you are," Yoda nodded. "Changed, the Chancellor has, during this war. More power he accumulates, less willing to relinquish it he becomes." "A common pattern among mortal rulers," Titus said. "In the Imperium, such ambition would be channeled into service to the Emperor or eliminated as potential heresy." "And which do you believe applies to Chancellor Palpatine?" Windu asked, his piercing gaze fixed on the Space Marine. Titus considered the question carefully. His limited interaction with Palpatine was insufficient for a definitive assessment, yet his centuries of experience had honed instincts that extended beyond mere tactical evaluation. "I cannot say with certainty," he finally responded, "but there was something in his manner that reminded me of certain Lord Inquisitors I have served alongside. Individuals who pursue knowledge and power with singular focus, regardless of doctrinal constraints." The Jedi Masters exchanged significant glances at this assessment, but offered no further comment as the transport continued its journey. Titus noted their reaction, filing it away for future consideration. Clearly, his observation had confirmed or reinforced existing suspicions among the Jedi leadership regarding their Chancellor. Political intrigue, while not his primary function as an Astartes, was nevertheless a battlefield of sorts, one where information and alliance often proved as decisive as bolter, fire, and blade. If he was to fulfill his duty in this galaxy, Titus would need to navigate these currents with the same tactical precision he applied to conventional warfare. As the Jedi Temple came into view, its 5 spires rising majestically above Coruscant's urban sprawl, Titus found himself contemplating Ventress's cryptic warning once more. "The Emperor plays a role you cannot imagine." The words haunted him, suggesting connections and patterns he could not yet discern. Whatever game was being played in this distant galaxy, Brother Captain Titus was determined to master its rules before it mastered him. The Emperor might be galaxies away, but his servant remained vigilant. As always, in the shadowed chambers of his private retreat, Chancellor Palpatine, or more accurately, Darth Sidious, communed with his apprentice through a secure holographic connection. Count Dooku's aristocratic features betrayed no emotion as he reported the events at the Mustafar facility. Ventress failed to capture either the Space Marine or his technology, Dooku concluded, though she reports that the encounter was instructive. Her failure was anticipated, Sidious replied, his voice deeper and more malevolent than the kindly tones he adopted as Chancellor. The primary objective was assessment, not capture. What is your apprentice's evaluation of this visitor from beyond our galaxy? She describes him as formidable beyond normal parameters, Dooku responded. His physical abilities exceed even Jedi capacity, while his armor renders most conventional weapons ineffective. More interesting, however, is his complete resistance to force-based mental influence. Ventress attempted to cloud his perceptions during combat, and encountered what she describes as a wall of absolute faith that her powers could not penetrate. Sidious smiled thinly. As I suspected, this God Emperor he serves has created warriors whose very conviction shields them from certain force techniques. Most interesting indeed. Do you believe he could be turned to our cause, Master? Dooku inquired. Not turned, precisely, Sidious mused. His indoctrination appears too deeply ingrained for conventional manipulation, but redirected perhaps. His rigid adherence to duty, his uncompromising nature, his belief in necessary sacrifice, these align more closely with Sith philosophy than Jedi sentimentality. Dooku raised an eyebrow. You intend to use him against the Jedi? I intend to understand him first, Sidious corrected. This Space Marine and the Imperium he describes represent something beyond our galaxy's experience, a civilization that embraces aspects of both light and dark, yet serves neither as we understand them. His yellow eyes gleamed with malevolent curiosity. The power that created such warriors could prove useful in our future endeavors, and if he cannot be redirected to serve our purposes, Sidious's expression hardened. Then, like all obsolete tools, he will be discarded. Arrange another encounter, my apprentice. I wish to test the limits of his conviction against more substantial opposition. As the hologram faded, Sidious turned to gaze out at the Coruscant skyline, his thoughts reaching across possibilities that even his Sith foresight could not fully penetrate. The Space Marine's arrival had introduced an unforeseen variable into his grand design, not enough to threaten its completion, but sufficient to warrant careful monitoring. Perhaps, he reflected with cold amusement, the Force itself had provided this gift to test the perfection of his plans. If so, he would demonstrate once again why the dark side would ultimately prevail. The Emperor indeed had a role to play, just not the one Captain Titus imagined. Days passed as Titus assisted the Jedi and their Republic scientists in analyzing the recovered Imperial technology. The work was conducted in a secure laboratory deep within the Jedi Temple, with access restricted to a select few masters and technical specialists who had been thoroughly vetted. Titus himself maintained a constant vigil, ensuring that no unauthorized experimentation occurred with technology that the Adeptus Mechanicus would have considered sacred. The metallurgical composition is unlike anything in our database, a Sarian scientist observed, examining a fragment of the drop pod's hull under a molecular scanner. The layered ceramite adamantium alloy demonstrates resistance properties that exceed our strongest armor plating by several orders of magnitude. The Emperor protects those who serve him, Titus stated matter-of-factly. Our armor, our weapons, our very bodies are manifestations of his divine will. The scientist glanced at Titus uncertainly before continuing his analysis. By now, most of the research team had learned to work around the Space Marine's frequent theological pronouncements, recognizing them as cultural expressions rather than literal assertions requiring response. Master Kenobi, who had been observing the proceedings with quiet interest, approached Titus. "I wonder, Captain, if you might join me for a moment. There's something I believe you should see." Curious, Titus followed the Jedi Master from the laboratory into an adjacent chamber that had been configured as a private study area. Holographic displays showed star charts of both the known galaxy and theoretical maps of regions beyond, including what appeared to be attempts to model the Space Marine's home reality based on the limited information he had provided. "Your scientists work quickly," Titus observed, studying the displays, though these models contain significant inaccuracies regarding the Imperium's territorial extent. "We're not attempting to map your galaxy precisely," Obi-Wan explained, activating a central holographic projector. "Rather, we're trying to understand the nature of the phenomenon that brought you here. The Council has authorized me to share our preliminary findings with you." The projector displayed a swirling vortex of energy, reminiscent of both the spatial distortion that had preceded Titus's arrival and the visualization of warp phenomena he had seen in Mechanicus technical briefings. "We believe what you experienced was a temporary alignment between two dimensions that normally exist independent of each other," Obi-Wan continued. "A bridge between realities, if you will, created by an unusual convergence of force, energies." Titus studied the projection with intense focus. "In my galaxy, such phenomena would be classified as warp rifts, dangerous tears in the fabric of reality that allow transit between real space and the immaterium. They are unpredictable and often catastrophic in their effects." "Yes, that aligns with our analysis." Obi-Wan nodded. "The good news, if you wish to return to your Imperium, is that such alignments might theoretically recur under similar conditions. The challenging news is that predicting or artificially generating such conditions is beyond our current understanding of physics and the Force." The implication was clear. Titus's return to the Imperium was possible, but not imminent or guaranteed. The Space Marine absorbed this information with the stoic acceptance bred into his transhuman nature. Uncertainty was a constant of warfare, adaptation to changing circumstances, a fundamental skill of the Adeptus Astartes. "I appreciate the Council's transparency in this matter," Titus said. "My duty remains clear, to serve the Emperor's will in whatever galaxy I find myself, until such time as return becomes possible." Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. "And what form does that duty take here, Captain?" "Our galaxy faces its own conflicts, its own balance of powers and ideologies. How does an ultramarine determine his path when the Imperium's specific enemies are absent?" It was a question Titus had contemplated extensively during his meditations. "The Emperor's light guides mankind against the darkness, regardless of its specific form," he replied. "In my assessment, these separatists and their Sith masters represent a clear threat to human civilization in this galaxy. Until I can return to the Imperium, opposing them serves the Emperor's broader mandate." "An interesting conclusion," Obi-Wan noted. "Though I wonder if you might find the situation more complex than initial appearances suggest. Not all separatists are malevolent, just as not all Republic actions are benevolent. This war, like most conflicts, defies simple categorization of right and wrong. Moral ambiguity is a luxury afforded to philosophers, not warriors," Titus stated. "In battle, one must choose a side based on available intelligence and strategic objectives. My analysis suggests that despite its flaws, the Republic more closely aligns with imperial principles of human unity than the separatist alternative." Before Obi-Wan could respond, His communicator chimed with an incoming transmission. "Kenobi here," he answered. "Master Kenobi," came the voice of Master Windu. "The Council requires your immediate presence. We've received disturbing reports from the Outer Rim. Captain Titus should accompany you. The matter may relate to his." "Unique situation. We're on our way," Obi-Wan confirmed, deactivating the communicator. To Titus, he added, "It seems our philosophical discussion must wait once again. Duty calls us both." They proceeded directly to the council chamber, where an atmosphere of tension permeated the circular room. Most of the council seats were filled, with Master Yoda presiding over what appeared to be an emergency session. A holographic display in the center of the chamber showed a star system Titus did not recognize, with tactical overlays indicating military movements. "Master Kenobi, Captain Titus," Yoda acknowledged their arrival. "Grave news we have received. An attack on the Kamino system, imminent it appears to be." "Kamino?" Titus inquired, unfamiliar with the location. "The cloning facilities that produce the Republic's army are located there," Windu explained. "Intelligence suggests a major separatist offensive is being prepared, led by General Grievous himself." The name meant nothing to Titus, but the strategic implications were immediately clear. "They seek to cripple your production capacity," he observed, "a logical target that would force you to defend at maximum commitment." "Yes," Windu nodded, grimly, "but our intelligence contains another detail of particular concern." He activated a secondary holographic display showing intercepted separatist communications. References to the warrior from the void and technologies beyond the galaxy suggest Grievous has specific interest in you, Captain Titus. "And the Imperial equipment we recovered from Mustafar." Titus processed this information with tactical precision. "The Separatists seek to capture me or my technology for strategic advantage. This presents both threat and opportunity." "Opportunity?" asked Ki-Adi-Mundi, his elongated cranium furrowing in confusion. "Enemies who specifically target an asset often commit tactical errors in their fixation," Titus explained. "If Grievous is indeed focused on capturing Imperial technology, his assault plan will contain vulnerabilities that can be exploited." Master Yoda's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Suggest what course of action do you, Captain?" "I would recommend using me as visible bait," Titus stated without hesitation. "Deploy me to Kamino with public announcement of my presence. Make it known that I am supervising the integration of Imperial technology with clone trooper equipment. Grievous will be compelled to commit additional forces specifically to my capture, potentially overextending his lines and creating exploitable weaknesses in his formation." A murmur ran through the council at the boldness of this suggestion. Obi-Wan stroked his beard, considering the tactical implications. "It's risky," he acknowledged, "but potentially effective. Grievous has a history of personal involvement when unique technology or powerful opponents are involved. His desire for trophies has led him into traps before." "Agree I do," Yoda nodded slowly. "But voluntary this mission must be. Great danger it presents to Captain Titus beyond normal parameters of combat." Titus straightened to his full height, towering over even the tallest Jedi Masters. "I am Adeptus. Astartes, danger is our purpose. The Emperor did not create the Space Marines to avoid risk, but to face it in mankind's defense." He placed his fist against his chest in the Legion's salute. "I volunteer without reservation." The council debated briefly before reaching consensus. The plan would proceed, with Titus deploying to Kamino alongside Masters Kenobi and Shaak Ti, the latter of whom supervised the clone training facilities. Additional Jedi and Republic forces would be positioned in reserve, ready to spring the trap once Grievous committed to the assault. As the council session concluded, Obi-Wan approached Titus privately. "I admire your courage, Captain, but I feel compelled to ensure you understand what you're facing. General Grievous is unlike any opponent you've encountered in this galaxy. He's a cybernetic monstrosity designed for the specific purpose of killing Jedi, with multiple lightsabers taken from those he's slain." "I have faced many abominations in the Emperor's service," Titus replied calmly. machine cult heretics who replace flesh with metal in blasphemous imitation of the Omnissiah's gifts, dark mechanicus fiends whose bodies incorporate daemon engines and forbidden technologies. This Grievous sounds formidable, but not beyond an Astartes' capacity to overcome. Obi-Wan's expression remained concerned. Perhaps. But there's something else you should know. Our intelligence suggests that Grievous won't be acting alone. Count Dooku, Ventress's master and apprentice to the Sith Lord we believe orchestrates this entire war, has taken personal interest in your presence. If he accompanies this assault, then the Emperor shall judge him as he judges all enemies of mankind, Titus stated with finality. Faith is my shield, Master Kenobi. It has not failed me in 10 centuries of service, and it shall not fail me now. As preparations for the mission began, Titus returned to his quarters for the rituals of war. He cleaned and blessed his weapons, recited the litany of accurate strikes, and performed the meditation techniques prescribed by the Codex Astartes for Astartes facing unknown enemies. Yet beneath his outward certainty, questions stirred in the Space Marine's enhanced mind. This war was not the Imperium's war. These enemies were not the familiar Xenos, heretics, and daemons he had been created to destroy. The political complexities of this republic, with its competing factions and unclear moral boundaries, defied the absolute certainty that had guided his service for centuries. For the first time in his long existence, Brother Captain Titus found himself making decisions based not on clear imperial doctrine or chapter tradition, but on his own assessment of what best served the Emperor's broader will. Such independence of thought would be viewed with suspicion by the chaplains of his chapter, perhaps even investigated for potential chaos influence. Yet here, galaxies distant from the Imperium's reach, who else but Titus himself could interpret the Emperor's will? The thought was simultaneously liberating and terrifying, a responsibility no Space Marine was ever meant to bear alone. As he completed his preparations, Titus gazed out at Coruscant's endless cityscape. Tomorrow he would depart for Camino, to face enemies who sought him specifically for reasons not yet fully understood. Whatever awaited him there, one certainty remained constant. He would face it as he had faced every battle for 10 centuries, with bolter, blade, and unshakable faith in the Emperor's guidance, even if that guidance now came from within rather than without.